Hello and welcome to yet another live stream. So, as you see, I have another person joining me today on our live stream for the first time. It's none other than Antariksh. We're going to be talking about the Champions League, the first leg tie between Manchester City and Real Madrid, and the Milan derby as well, which took place. The first match was, of course, one hell of a game. We'll be talking about that in depth, and also the Milan derby, which slightly looks one-sided at this point of stage, but nonetheless we will talk about what are the chances in which the AC Milan team can come back. But firstly, welcome Antariksh on the stream. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, brother. A pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me. It's the first time, and two intriguing games, two different
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
And excited to discuss it with you.
absolutely. So without wasting any time, let's get to the first match, right? What were your expectations? Let's before we talk about what were your expectations getting into this semi-final? Because you already have seen Manchester City dominating almost in the Premier League at this point of stage. They have gotten to the run, which they usually get with a lot of momentum. They just get on these winning runs. And on the other end, Real Madrid just getting into this tie, winning Copa del Rey, of course, but still, they are slightly more jaded, especially in terms of being consistent enough. So, what were your expectations, before getting into this tie?
Yeah, there'll be obviously two sides to the expectation as always.
Yeah,
Because when Real Madrid is in play, you have to you just somehow have to ignore everything and just
yeah,
look
yeah,
at Real Madrid as a team in the Champions League, especially
yes,
post quarterfinals. Like you just don't know, they
absolutely.
could be losing to the likes of Osasuna and Almeria on one day and then thrashing Bayern Munich
Yeah,
the midweek. So you don't really know what to expect, in terms of when it's Real Madrid in the Champions League. But the way the English media was trying to spin it, the likes of Wayne Rooney and all those pundits,
yeah,
that Real Madrid is gone, Real Madrid is finished, they're going to be thrashed.
yeah,
I didn't really think that was going to be the
yeah,
case, and then that is what happened. A pretty even game, a pretty exciting game, and a game
yeah,
which we expected from the likes of City and the Real Madrid. And when we
yeah,
talk about the other game, yeah, what do I say? I mean, Rafael Leao was missing, so that
yeah.
was a big puncture for them. And
Massive, massive, absolutely.
yeah, and on paper, Inter did at least to me look like the team who was going to be the upper side, but the way they just came out, all guns blazing, the
Yeah,
first 15-20 minutes was actually surprising.
right.
So yeah.
That's something. We'll talk about that Inter game because one team which has really intrigued me in the entire Champions League has been Inter Milan, and people might be talking about they've not had a greatest of runs in Serie A,
Yeah.
but then I personally felt the way in which they managed games earlier in the group stage as well
Yeah.
against Barcelona, even against Bayern Munich for their liking. They were
Yeah.
pretty good at that. But let's talk about this game. Let's just break it down by the stats what we have, right? We'll talk about the City versus the Real Madrid game. As you mentioned, you definitely do not write off Real Madrid in knockouts of Champions League. They've been there. It's a legacy club. It's just like they've been there and done it. And you saw it in them, right? The Bernabeu crowd was behind them. And you saw the moment in which they were trying to take on the play. Especially, you have talk about which they cut off the Haaland thread. Rudiger on
Yeah.
him, playing Cruz as CDM in that game. And especially Winnie. You have to talk about it. He's one of the best wingers out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. He
How did you
is. He
see
is.
that happening? Real Madrid were on top of their game. Maybe better than City as well, most part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, they were. I mean, I was just talking to one of my friends earlier, and I was saying, yeah, football is an ironic game, isn't it? Like for the first 30 minutes, we saw the Real Madrid fans whistling, and they were whistling their team to sort of get on the front foot, just wake
Yeah, yeah,
up. It's the Champions League semi-final, and which was
yeah,
pretty sort of odd to see. And sort of 30 minutes down the line, they just realized, oh, it's Estadio Santiago Bernabeu and not the City Stadium. So it's like our home game. We sort of need to get pumped up a bit. And that is when I saw Real Madrid getting into the game, the likes of Toni Kroos and Modric dropping down and
yeah,
sort of awkward positions onto the field, like a Camavinga sort of drifting in and then going out
yeah,
on the left wing with their wingers pushing into the wider areas more and more. So yeah, man. I mean, again, it's an ironic game, as in when we sort of thought that hey, City was just gonna sort of knock them off. Actually,
yeah,
this might be serious. They just got a
yeah,
goal.
absolutely.
Maybe Don Carlo raised an eyebrow or two, and Vinicius just went on the run and scored a banger. And then
Oh
when
man,
we
that
thought,
goal.
the European champions, the maestros of Europe were sort of getting into it, City scored a wonder strike. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
ironic.
I mean, if you look at the XG as well, it's level playing field, man. It's
Yeah,
0.6 XG. Both the teams had, like I said, Real Madrid had extra bit of shots in the target, especially towards
yeah,
latter end. That Chouameni shot, if it had gone in, that would have been another wonder goal to talk about. But what really kind of intrigued me was the way in which they kind of nullified the threat of Bernardo Silva on the right hand side. You can
oh yeah,
say Kamavinga on the ball was not so much impressive, but off the ball, his work at times was really good, especially in terms of intercepting and making sure interception of Tony Cruz as well. Tony Cruz on De Bruyne playing that stadium position nullified two biggest creative threats of Manchester City. How did you think that tactical battle worked out? Because Manchester City, if you look in the last couple of weeks, or if you talk last 6 weeks at least, these two guys, especially as wing backs,
yeah.
especially as wing back of Bernardo Silva and Grealish, they've done pretty well in terms of cutting and drifting inside. Now, once you take them completely wide, that extra bit of threat which they can possibly bring in middle of the park goes completely off.
It does, and I was actually surprised when although I did think maybe Chouamini could get in a start, but then the numbers didn't add up because Modric
Yeah.
and Cruz cannot sort of go out of the team, and Fede Valverde's sort of aggression can never be taken off in games like these. But I was actually surprised to see if Valverde sort of taking those forward positions than Tony Cruz. Tony
Yeah.
Cruz dropping in deep. Actually, I think it was an in-game tactic done
Yeah.
by Don Carlo, wherein he saw
Yeah.
the relentless press of
Yeah.
Manchester City sort of choking them for the first 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That is when he
Yeah.
wanted those maestros on the ball, sort of receiving the ball from the back four. And
Mm.
you're absolutely right. Camavinga on the ball was like, okay, normal, normal Camavinga stuff. But him
Yeah.
being off the ball, like Champions League semi-final, that kid is playing left back. He didn't look out of position
I
at
mean,
all.
do you reckon at this time Pep was slightly more defensive as well? We do give Pep its credit, but then especially in that game, you felt Pep was slightly defensive to start off with. Maybe he would have taken the 1-1, maybe going into the next level, because you know what can happen in Santiago Bernabeu. You don't want to
Yeah,
concede a lot
yeah.
as well, because if you look at the last 9 occasions, only two of the occasions where Madrid has not won, and Santiago Bernabeu, they proceeded into the next round, and Bernabeu
Yeah.
was going to be your biggest threat. Last season, you saw what happened with City and Bernabeu. It was those was the second leg, but things do happen in Bernabeu pretty quickly.
Absolutely, they do. It's got to play on the psychology of Pep. Like we've accused the guy of overthinking in the biggest stages, and I think he just wanted to keep it simple this time around. Manchester City from November to January, February, they start these runs. Obviously, the World Cup was here, so what they do is when teams start to get fatigued, that is when
Yeah,
their strength, their numbers, their quality kicks in.
yeah,
And
agree.
by the time sort of this World Cup ended and all the players started to look a bit fatigued and out of their depth, the squads are sort of thinning out. That is where their
Yeah,
numbers, so like in place of January, sort of November to January period, this
yeah.
time it's like the March to May period that they're absolutely dominating. And
Mm,
I think Pep just sort of took advantage of the fact that he's got a big squad. He has got
yeah.
a big squad and he'd like to keep things simple, and that's what I think he did. And getting
How
a
did you make
result
of
that,
that also that point where Pep did not make a substitution entire 90 minutes? Because
yeah.
maybe he's thinking about the weekend Premier League fixture as well, but then he did not make a single substitution. Did that come up as a surprise? For me, at least it did, because he could have brought in someone like a Phil Ford and Julian Alvarez, a
Yeah,
little bit more dynamic. They can switch the play a lot
absolutely.
more, get into different, become more fluid. But he did not do that.
Absolutely. And the surprising, not really the surprising, but he was like quite satisfied with the performance of his team. Like post match, we could see some sort of like he rarely does give off delight when he's
Yeah,
not won a game, but he was
yeah,
sort of impressed with the way he was like, this way, fantastic, this, that. And, he was like
yeah,
quite in the mood. Yeah. So like he
yeah.
was absolutely cheering up Kyle Walker at the right side as
Mm,
well to sort of
yeah,
break in the point. So I think he was pretty satisfied and absolutely well said that on his mind there is this weekend's game as well,
yeah,
wherein it's equally important, if not more important, for
yeah,
them to sort of
yeah.
hold on to the 3 points there as well. So yeah, quite an intriguing thing to see moving in forward to the next week. That's how it's going to play out.
Yeah, for me, I've been following City, and one thing which I kind of adored the way in which this season what they've been doing is a game management, become a lot
Yeah,
more mature. Maybe they're fine to give away the ball a lot more to the opposition. You saw that against the Bayern Munich second leg as well, and let the opposition play along, and then maybe maintain a structure. Because I've seen that with City, even the last season, the second leg against Madrid, they lost shape towards the latter end. They did not know what to do. Game management becomes so important in this season. That's why Carlo Ancelotti is a master at it. And I think we'll take that question on Haaland and Rudiger. You have to say Rudiger just annoyed Haaland to the every
Yeah.
bit. He did not give a single space. He was absolutely on him. Every time Haaland got the ball, he was ready to push him down, though to win the tactical fouls as well. But yeah, it was one intriguing battle to watch there.
Yeah, oh man, this was pure Rudiger, Rudiger at his finest in terms of being the annoying, humorous, yet a quality defender that he is. We saw his videos flooding through Instagram wherein he's
Yeah,
just behind Haaland, like just under Haaland, and he's trying to
yeah,
irritate
yeah, yeah.
on to the next level. And he was successful. He was really successful. And then he was cocky enough to come out and say they weren't really a threat. And that
Yeah,
was something, which
yeah,
only
that's.
Rudiger can do after facing Manchester City. So yeah, funny.
I mean, that is typically Rudiger. We've seen him annoy City in the Champions League final 2 years ago as well. How he was absolutely on Gabriel Jesus there, but
Yeah.
but you have to say that that was one interesting battle. One other interesting battle which I loved was Carvajal versus Grealish. They were at
Mm,
it for the first half. I thought one
mm,
of them was going to be carted off, but it came to that
yeah,
point, wasn't it? Because Carvajal did a very good job there. He made sure Grealish was absolutely off his game because of that. Because Grealish was more focused on Carvajal there. It was not
yeah,
Carvajal's strength. If you look in the recent past, Carvajal has been slightly offbeat in terms of his
yeah,
form, in terms of his
yeah.
ball progression, but defensively by winning those tactical fouls, getting the better of Grealish there, you have to say he won that battle as well.
Again, like Carvajal, I sometimes think Carvajal is Real Madrid personified. The guy doesn't look quite the player when we're talking about the league, and like when it's Champions League, man, he just wakes up a different giant, doesn't he? Like every
Yeah,
time you go, Danny Carvajal has been under the scrutiny since the day he's been in that Real Madrid jersey. I mean, he's been given heaps of praises when he's deserved it, but he's always been under that spotlight when it's the big games. But he somehow manages to deliver every single time, and that's what he did. And the referee sort of fed into the agenda of not carding Madrid players.
yeah,
I really thought that foul when that potential counter attack was going in, Carvalho had already committed two sort of similar fouls, and then the third one he wasn't
right.
carded. And maybe if he would have been carded, at that time, that would have played
Mhm.
a lot on the psychology, and that would have given Grealish a bit
Yeah,
upper hand into the battle. But it is what it
yeah,
is, and in the grand scheme of things, I think Carvalho did a fantastic job on Grealish.
I mean, that's about it from the first leg. Maybe let's look into the next leg because already we've got a question
Oh,
straight up. क्या Real जीत पाएगा कि नहीं? Of course, we'll have to talk about it.
there you go, man.
Very
That's the
straightforward. I mean,
business
that's
question, yeah.
yeah. I mean, let's talk about it. How do you see the second leg now panning out? Because now back in Etihad for Real Madrid, one thing in Champions League, it doesn't matter where they play, home or away,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
absolutely own the occasion. It's about the occasion. It's about the yard of the pitch, and it's about the ball in front of them. It doesn't matter. They have these moments which I don't think a lot of teams in the world can stop them.
yeah,
And that's why Real Madrid is what Real Madrid is. 14 Champions
absolutely.
Leagues, and it's no joke. At the end of the day, they won it because of these moments which they have captured it. Let's talk
Yeah,
about it. How do you see Pep approaching it? Because now Pep will be absolutely knowing that the ball will be in his court, and it's about time that he dominates it. I don't see
yeah.
any systematic changes, but it's going to be about how he deploys it in a better way.
Yeah. Again, man, you asked the question, how do you see the second leg panning? I don't. I just don't because I can't see it, anyway, because no one can predict it. Anyone who does manage to predict it the right way was a fluke, guys. You're not any
Yes.
sort of astrologer or anything. It was a fluke. Just know it because although I believe City go in touch with sort of favorites into the game, but again, it's like favorites what?
Real Madrid.
51-49. I mean,
Absolutely.
you just can't say a word about Real Madrid in the Champions League. Home or away, as you said, they're going to be there, and Manchester City is going to look to dominate the ball. But mind you, Real Madrid is not going to sit back and wait for the counter. They're not Atletico
Absolutely.
Madrid. They're Real
Yeah.
Madrid.
Yeah, you know that. I mean, you might seem in some phases like they are maintaining a mid block or a low block, but then
Yeah,
the moment they are in the game, that their momentum, they're a momentum team. There are phases where they can absolutely press you no matter which team on the world you are and take you down. And that's why they're one of the most aesthetically and the most, what do you say, the most influencing team in terms of that momentum
yeah,
phases. where they can absolutely hit you on the counter with Vinny and Rodrigo on either side of the wings and Benzema through the middle. And also, you have to mention Valverde, as you mentioned rightly before as well.
Ooh.
His threat going up the field has
Yeah.
been exponentially well for this team. So Hulk smash, that's the question. It's very tough to predict at this point. Real जीत पाएगा कि नहीं, पर कुछ भी हो सकता है अगले हफ्ते, कुछ भी हो सकता है, वही तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ. We got another
Absolutely.
question which says Man City Milan derby ain't over, so I think it's about time we go to the next game. I mean,
Yeah.
what build up to that game. I mean, it has happened after 16 long years in the in the Champions League, and this had to be the occasion was set. On one side, of course, Rafael Leao was out, and you mentioned as well it was a massive, massive puncture for the AC Milan team because he's been most influential player for them.
Yeah.
But talk about that game, Inter Milan. You have to say in the recent past had the wood over AC Milan. They showed why they
They
had
have.
it.
And surprisingly enough, I didn't expect the recent past to be that one-sided between the Milan teams because there isn't much that separates them in terms of what they've won on the field and how they've been performing in the Serie A. But I think Inter Milan just showed why. And
Yeah,
although I'm a big fan of Pioli and what he's done at AC Milan and how he's sort of
yeah,
picked them up from where they were and how he's sort of building them. But I
yeah,
think there is, yesterday showed that their dependence on someone like Rafael Leao, although they did their best to clone him and make him into Divock Origi when they brought
yeah,
Origi on. But you don't really do that to Leao. Leao is something
yeah.
else. He just glides from the midfield into the box in no time. He scores that goal, which we all do on FIFA, and not really many players can really replicate that, except if you're on your Xbox or, as I said.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
man, I think on paper, I mean, the likes of Kalanolu, this guy Barella, he was
Yeah,
outstanding. He was everywhere. Like
yeah,
the way he won the ball so many times. Like I
absolutely.
think he had the most recoveries as well as balls won
Yeah,
than
yeah.
any player. And the likes of Dzeko and
Dzeko,
Martinez.
yeah.
So
I
I
mean, I
mean,
think we have to talk about that. It was so good to watch the midfield of Inter Milan really come into the foot because I felt there was if you let Tonali to come into the game a lot more, that would
yeah,
mean Milan are in a better position. With Krunic and Tonali being well on the ball, but their off the ball movements were restricted because of
yeah.
Çalhanoğlu and because of Barella making those in behind runs and getting more up the field. And they're also release someone like a Lautaro Martinez to be drifting wide and letting Dzeko to come more central, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Dzeko, as you rightly mentioned, the partnership between Martinez and Dzeko is absolutely fantastic, wherein we saw both of them sort of dropping in deep, but we saw
Yeah.
two different phases of what dropping in deep means. One,
Yeah.
one is a sort of a mobile striker, wherein you drop deep, you look to turn on
Yeah.
the ball,
Yeah.
and the other one looked to bring in different players. He was a big physical threat there. He was
Yeah.
dropping in, he was holding players out, and he was absolutely fantastic on the day, Dzeko. Like, he was absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic, didn't look any bit that the age people call him of. Like, he was on point. He looked like he sort of meant it, that it's my stage and it's sort of finally my time to rule over Europe now. And he deservedly got his goal early in the game. I mean, and
Yeah.
also one player which which sort of reminds me of Man United as Matteo Darmian. He could
Yeah.
potentially be playing in a Champions League final, and that, I don't know. I have
Yeah.
mixed feelings about that. Yeah.
I mean, you have to have brought his name out, but I have to talk about a special mention was, as you mentioned, was Dzeko because I felt yesterday he just showed what experience matters in these kind of games and how that presence inside the box can be so vital. He's out and out striker, right? He's that
Yeah.
target man in the box. He can put the ball in him at the same time, drop in deep. And also one thing which I really found very interesting was for AC Milan was them not involving their main players, especially for even for Brahim. He was part of the game, but then his involvement was completely curtailed. And that's why you have to give credit to someone like a Bastoni. Bastoni did a phenomenal job
Mm.
yesterday in terms of cutting it out. You have seen that already in the semifinals, in the quarterfinals as well, how good he can be in stepping up in these kind of
Yeah.
occasions. And yesterday, once again, taking out the attacking threat of Brahim and Giroud completely because Giroud did not have a strike partner, as you mentioned. With Liao out, Giroud was left isolated up front.
Giroud, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Giroud's game depends on sort of other people coming in. He's that attractive figure, like the way he
Yeah,
can control ball in close quarters, the way he can manipulate it all around. But he needs runners. He needs runners, and he needs tricky runners. We saw that at Arsenal, at Chelsea, and now we
yeah,
did see it Milan with Liao coming in. Like, they both formed an
yeah, yeah,
absolutely sort of a different level of partnership. We also saw one moment with Divock Origi wherein he slipped and I don't
Mhm.
remember the name of the guy, but that was a that was a great chance. And the whole game could be
And even
summed up
Tony
by
and
the fact.
Messias had a good couple of chances there. I know
Yeah,
he came in from the left hand side. If you would have
yeah.
maybe finished one of them, this would have been a better tie to go into the next leg.
I mean, it was, but on the night we could say that probably AC Milan would consider themselves lucky that they were not out of the tie in the first 20 minutes. The way
Yeah,
things were going in, like they just came
yeah,
in with a click, and they were looking like a team who desperately wanted that European final. And it could be
yeah,
sort of summed up in the by the fact that AC Milan got their first shot on target, if I'm not wrong, in
yeah.
the additional time when the
Yeah.
game was ending. So that sort of tells us everything, albeit that they did strike the post once.
I mean, I also give credit to Inzaghi over there in terms of bringing Brozovic at the right time. You saw the moment
Yeah,
Brozovic, there was a phase from 55th to 70th minute where Milan was trying to go up the field a lot more. That's when
creeping
these
in.
couple
Yeah,
of chances came as well. But once Brozovic came, he absolutely took the momentum away. He just came in and killed the playoff, winning, getting those interceptions in and controlling the play. Then the pressure was absorbed by Brozovic. Then he was running the play. I mean, that's where you have to give credit to Inter Milan. I was very surprised he did not start, but the moment he came in, that presence in the midfield. Now you have so much of experience there. Brozovic, Chalanolu, then you have someone like a Barella. You have to say they are strong favorites just to put their head into the final of the Champions League in Istanbul.
oh yeah, for sure. Some people calling it that they have one leg in the final. I don't really believe so. I won't go that far, but yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, they're strong, strong favorites. A two-goal lead wherein like it could still go anywhere because you get a goal and the deficit
yeah,
is just halved, and you have the whole of the remaining game to just get one goal. So I won't really
yeah,
go to the lengths of saying they've already sort of, maybe if it was 3-0, I could have sort of called it. But as you said, that substitution of Brozovic was just, I think it just went the way Inzaghi would have planned it. Like, this is your
yeah,
role, Brozovic. You come in, you just settle the nerves when they're kicking in, and that's what
yeah.
experience does for you.
Yeah. I mean, you have to say that was a masterpiece from Inzaghi. And
It
let's talk about Inter Milan as a team as well, because I did mention at the start of the live how they've had this run, right? They defeated Barcelona in San Siro, because they defeated Barcelona in San Siro at a time where Inzaghi was under pressure. That it was not going
Yeah,
well for them. They were seventh in the league at that point of time. They've had six draws leading into that game, and they got that win. Then they went to Camp Nou, took a draw over there. Then things absolutely turned around. Then all of a sudden, Porto game happened. People were still unsure. But then Benfica game is when people
yeah.
started believing there's something about this team. And now they
Acknowledging,
showed
yeah,
why
absolutely.
again this team can absolutely maybe even go on to win the Champions League once again. Because on that day they can turn it up.
They can. Some people again, as we just discussed, they're pretty heavy favorites, and the way even the team looks on paper and the way the players are performing. I mean, Henrik Mkhitaryan, someone like a Mkhitaryan stepping on the plate and scoring that wondrous goal. I mean,
Yeah.
he would be really livid with himself the way he couldn't
Yeah.
finish that. Another chance which he had like 3-4 minutes
Hmm.
later, or something
Right.
like that, wherein Barella, I guess, controlled it, and then he couldn't
Yeah.
shoot it past Maniac.
Sure.
So I mean, yeah, that just sort of tells us the way Inter Milan are and the way they just want it. They just want to be in that final in Istanbul.
Yeah.
And as we say, finals can go anywhere. They're just decided on the day. There are no
Yeah.
favorites in finals. So yeah, it does look like
If you
Inzaghi
remember in
has turned out a
2010 as
corner.
well, Inter Milan were not the favorites heading into that final against Bayern Munich. Yeah, it
Man, they
was
won.
just sheer that game presence from Jose Mourinho which won them. So anything can happen. That's why finals are to be played on that day, and there's no
Yeah.
favorites. You reach the final for a reason. What about Vinny's game? I mean, we already did speak about Vinny's game and KDB's game as well. I mean, it was just phenomenal to say the least. Alkmaar match. I mean, you have to say Vinny is the best winger in the world at this point of stage in Europe or wherever he is. I mean, let's put out some of the stats from the game of Inter Milan versus AC Milan as well. You
Yeah.
have to say it was a one-sided affair. XG says it, shots on target says it, everything else as well, which follows. Right? The possession, you can say, was the only thing which AC Milan had it. That also towards the latter end of the game when the game
Yeah.
was more and when the game was almost dead. When
Yeah.
Inter was trying to manage that game. Where do you think AC Milan can come out of it? Because next leg is not going to be easy. It's in 1 week time.
Yeah.
You have to get ready. 6 days time is a little bit of less than amount of time, right? You have to get ready. You have to switch on. Not sure about the Rafael Leao's availability as well. Now, how do they come back out of this mud, whatever they are in?
Man. Man, I'll not try to be a Guardiola of this world or Sir Alex here. I'll just say as it is. Rafael Leao, you just get him back. You use that Karate Kids formula to get him back, heal his thigh, but you just got to have him back. There is no way, except for the fact that, that he could probably have something serious. But if not that, I
Yeah,
think he has to go through that pain and play for AC Milan. That is one thing that sort of single-handedly sort of decides the tie. But if
yeah,
that, if not that, because we can never say never in football, I think Inter Milan, AC Milan just need to step up their game in every term.
mm,
Like when we saw they had possession, we just saw the stats. They almost had
yeah,
60%. One, they added in the later stage of the game, and
yeah,
two, even when they did at the start and between the game, they, it was just in such a they were just passing around the back four,
yeah,
sort of putting it onto the midfielder Benacer,
yeah,
Diaz, and just
yeah,
passing it back again. So like we call it unharmful possession. So
yeah,
they just need more movement. They just need more fluidity to their game, and they just need
yeah,
more, the way they say passion, aggression, and all of those jazz. So they
yeah.
just need to step it up and pray to God Liao comes back.
I mean, I also really hope Liao comes back because the guy, that kid has got something about him. There's a reason why he's termed as the next big thing in the world, just not for AC
Yeah.
Milan, and a lot of European teams are also behind him. Even against Napoli, the way in which he ran past Kim Min-jae, the way in which he made a mockery of Napoli, and that's where
Yeah.
you knew that this guy is. He's got great heights to achieve, and I personally feel as well they have to be much more clinical up front. The chances they got yesterday, if they would have buried one of them, this game would have been totally
Oh,
different.
they will.
Especially in the way they would have gone. Europa wala life bhi karna padega next season. Yeah, I mean we will do Europa League. I mean tonight is a big game. There's Roma taking on Bayer Leverkusen as well. Two good teams.
Yeah.
I really want Jose
Yeah.
Mourinho to get another trophy, hopefully, but Xabi Alonso is there as well. He's done a phenomenal
Yeah.
job there. Any thoughts
I,
on that?
yeah, man. I don't really like Mourinho at this point now. I think he's way past it now. I think he's surviving on. He's a great manager. Who am I
Yeah,
to go there and knock him off? But in terms
yeah,
of what I mean, it's like that king who has fallen from grace and he can't sort of leave his throne now.
yeah,
He sort of reminds me that you're Mourinho. You're of course Mourinho. You were the special one. No one
yeah,
can take away. As we just mentioned, that Inter Milan treble season,
yeah,
history is never going to be able to rob you of that. But man, come on, like even Mourinho, like when he puts his hand here, he can say that yeah, like the football, unless and until he sort of, he doesn't have to be Guardiola or someone, but
yeah,
unless and until he sort of takes that next chapter in his management, the game seems to have sort of passed his way of playing. But
yeah, yeah. I
for
agree.
what it's worth, to Roma, he has done a pretty decent job there. I mean,
I have to admit that he's done a good
yeah,
job with Roma, taking them to European, or they've taken them to Conference League, another semi-final of European competition. I think he's a good cup manager even at this point of stage. Maybe
yeah,
I
oh
will
for
doubt
sure,
if he can maybe even survive in the Serie A, because the competition in Serie A is getting better with every year. Because
yeah,
I feel every team is on a level playing field, with Atlanta, with Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus, and even with Napoli there now. So
yeah.
you have to admit that Roma's that style of play might not be that cutting edge. But let's look at
Very
the team. Yeah,
very sneakily, Serie A has just become this league wherein whatever we call Premier League, whatever adjectives we give to Premier League, it's
yeah,
everything in Serie A now. You just
yeah,
mentioned 6-7 teams probably fighting
yeah.
it out for the couple
Yeah,
top
absolutely. And if you look at the
spots.
points difference between Sampdoria and even between, even if you look at even Rio Verona when the last season as well, it was
Yeah,
extremely close. It was not like what do you see in La Liga at this point of stage, or if you see in
yeah,
Bundesliga at this point of stage, couple of teams really
yeah.
taking that gear forward, and anybody can win Serie A at this point of stage. That is the beauty of
They
it,
can,
and that is why I
and
personally like Juventus falling down as well.
yeah, I mean, we've seen it as a live proof that for the last 3 seasons, no team has sort of gotten onto the crux of it like Juventus did. But hey, it just turns out to be extra entertainment for people like us, wherein
Yeah,
we've had Napoli and the fallen Italian giants coming back and rising,
yeah,
which is. And I was just talking about Mourinho. It'll be typical Mourinho if he wins the Europa League, calls it quits, Tata bye bye, runs off to PSG, and like
oh yeah,
he'll be an urban legend there. Conference, Europa, getting them back onto the map of Italian football. He would have sort
yeah,
of done his job, and he'd love nothing more
absolutely
than his reputation being skyrocketed by winning a couple of
true.
cups that I don't really Great.
If you talk about the European competitions at this point of stage, there is Fiorentina there in the
Yeah.
Conference League, who's strong favorites. There is Roma there in the Europa League, and there is Inter Milan or AC Milan. So I think there are close to 5 teams in the Italian league who's fighting out for
Yeah.
European titles. That in itself shows how Serie A has really come one notch up from what they were in the last 3-4 seasons ago and what they are right now. I mean, you have to compare it to. A lot of the teams have become much more balanced. The style of football has also changed. Whatever I've
Yeah,
noticed.
they had to. They had to. I mean, and that's the beauty, because money has got nothing to do with Italian football coming back on the map, which is the prime and the most beautiful thing that I've sort of realized
Absolutely.
this season. Money hasn't played one bit of a part. In fact, money has sort of kept them from being the likes of these cities and Real Madrids of this world
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
years now, because all of the revenue getting sucked into the Premier League and with
Yeah.
giants like Barca and Real and La Liga. So beautiful. That's
Truly.
beautiful.
That's why we can have an entire debate on which is the best league in the world. I think that's for another day, because that's
Yeah.
a beautiful discussion as well. Because if you talk about it, there are a lot of leagues which are underrated, especially in Bundesliga this season. It's been phenomenal as well. We've got a question. So the United House, I just got a thought that Serie A just started to become like a Premier League from a year after Ronaldo left the league. I think it's not Premier League, because Premier League is a lot of money more minded at this point. It's, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, it's just the passion, it's just the quality of
Mm.
players which they've been able to
Yeah.
get.
I think the way post this pandemic, like Serie A was on the ground, like the left, right, and center. There was news that this club is going bankrupt, that club is going bankrupt. They don't have money, and even if you look at their spendings, I mean, I think a couple of Premier League teams probably overweigh the entire Serie A spending. That just tells
Absolutely.
us the whole story. How they've been going. Like, just look at Napoli. I mean, they didn't even cash in properly the way they
Absolutely.
sold some of their best play. They just
Absolutely.
partially reinvested it in their
Yeah.
scouting area, and the way
Yeah.
they've come up with players.
Yeah.
Again, the managers should be given the credit, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just been beautiful, the turnaround of Italian football.
Truly. You have to say at this point, it's a glory days of Italian football winning the Euros. Unfortunately, they did not make the World Cup, but other than that, they've done everything right
Yeah.
to be there and up there in the radar. Let's talk about team of the week. Finally, it's better to talk about team of the week, especially in these semi-finals, because especially in group stage, it's so hard to pick team of the week. So many good
Mm.
players. How did you see this team of the week? I think it's a good one. It's finally, you can say everybody agree to it. Maybe I might not have. Yeah, I'm fine with it. DiMarco has had a good one.
Yeah.
Dumfries, you have many players from the Inter Milan game. And you have
Yeah.
Winnie there, De Bruyne out there, and many on back. So how did you make of that team?
I think it's like, again, I just can't look past Matteo Damian here. I mean, he is in the UEFA team of the week for UCL semi-finals. Like, that just puts me onto the bed. But on the flip side of things, I think the only sort of person I'd maybe debate here would
Tony
be
Cruz. I would have had Tony Cruz there.
Tony
Did we just lose the connection? Yeah. Are you
is
there?
there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
yeah,
think we
sorry,
just
I lost you there. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think I lost you there.
I was asking you. So, like, you'd have Tony Cruz in the place of who?
Mkhitaryan. I know he scored, but then the kind of game which Tony Cruz had, he absolutely controlled. If that game would have been, City would have had much more of the more ball, especially in the final third, if not for Tony Cruz intercepting a lot of passes. For me, he was
Yeah.
a man of the match in the City game. For me, I would have
All
had
right.
some Tony Cruz. Maybe Mkhitaryan, or even I could put him in instead of Çalhanoğlu. Either of them. But Tony Cruz
I,
deserved at
I
least.
I think I could also I'm not really sure who, but I could see replacing one of the center backs with the guy, because I think
Yeah,
you could
fair
go
enough.
four at the back, and then with sort of Tony Cruz being in, because he really did deserve that mention. But one
Yeah,
player which I'm sort of looking at here is Andre Onana, and although
yeah,
he did manage to keep a clean sheet, I don't know. I'm like, when I used to play in my very
yeah,
under
yeah,
under levels of league, I was a goalkeeper, and I always used to hate the fact that when I have to do nothing and I keep a clean sheet, everyone's like, oh, well done, mate, well done,
yeah,
mate.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then when we concede three, but I have had to make 11 worldies, because my
yeah,
defense was so,
yeah. So
shambles. I've
yeah,
not been given any credit. So I think Onana was that example. I think Maniac,
yeah,
like the way, like he kept AC Milan in the tie. A couple of
yeah,
massive saves, and even you could debate that about Courtois and Ederson
yeah.
as well. That
Ederson as well.
Shomini flying save.
And
So
remember
I
that shot in Rodri, which
oh
it bounced and he had to save it. That would have
yeah.
gone in if it was any other keeper that was going in. It bounced
that
wide at a very awkward angle.
yeah, like again, the revival of Courtois, and especially the way he's been for the past 2 years after sort of a difficult start at life to Real Madrid. Yeah, I mean, I just think any keeper could have been there. I wouldn't keep Onana there because he frankly just had to sit and eat popcorn all day.
So we've got a prediction from Kushagra himself where he says Madrid and Inter to progress. Good one.
There you go.
Good one. I
There you
mean,
go. There you go.
that's a
You're
good
not,
one.
you're
I mean,
not, Kushagra, you're not winning much money by betting on these two teams, Right.
it's
Yeah.
it's even Stevens. For me, maybe Inter game is slightly more you can say
Yeah.
Inter is slightly ahead at this point. Maybe they're
Yeah.
60
Oh,
40.
they are.
But
They
other
are.
than that,
Yeah.
it's 50-50 for me. Madrid versus City, it's 50-50. Yeah, not even 51
Absolutely.
49. It's 50-50. Anything can
Absolutely.
happen. It's just that moments. It could go to penalties.
Yeah, it could.
It'll be crazy if it goes to penalties.
It does.
I don't
I
want that
mean,
to happen.
any game, you see Luton down against Man City in the fifth in the fifth round of FA Cup. It's interesting when it goes to penalties. So no doubts about it being a UCL semi-final with penalties. So there you go.
Absolutely. I mean, that's about it from this. I mean, we've had a good 35 minutes of discussion, and it was
Man.
wonderful having you on Antariksh on the first live stream, and many more to come. So stay tuned.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about all these interesting topics which we were talking today as well, maybe in depth, and also some of the cricket as well coming in your way because IPL is going on. There's a match going on right now. We'll be talking about that very soon as we do our weekly review rather, and preview also for the next week. Now it's a business end of the IPL. I hope you all are enjoying that, and do check out our Instagram page. Do give it a follow and subscribe to the channel, and also share this video with all your friends and family. So then we can keep bringing you all this exciting content, and also click that bell icon. So next time we go live, you get a notification. You can come in and ask all these interesting questions. Give all your predictions because by next week when we come for the live stream, we'll know who are the finalists going to Istanbul. So that's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking about the final and building up as well. Thank you, Antariksh. Pleasure having you today.
Pleasure being here, man. Pleasure being here. To
Bye-bye.
many more streams. Take care.